The term worst year ever gets thrown around a lot these days. It's become a popular phrase online, often in response to personal disappointments, whether it's being let down by the latest movie release or feeling frustrated by events that didn't go as planned. But when we look back at the entire history of our planet, historians and scientists have actually argued that no year was worse than the year 536. Yes, there have been many contenders for the title of worst year throughout history, but none have had such a lasting, profoundly negative impact that echoed for decades after. Today, we're diving deep into the reasons why 536 holds the grim distinction of being the worst year to be alive. But before we begin this fascinating journey into the past, take a moment to subscribe to the History Speaks channel. If you love history as much as we do, you'll want to stay updated on our latest videos. Don't forget to drop a comment below. Let us know what piece of history you'd like us to explain next. Alright, now that we've set the stage, let's explore why the year 536 stands out as the absolute worst time to be alive. During this time, the Byzantine Empire was thriving under the rule of Emperor Justinian, but even that couldn't prevent the turmoil that was about to unfold. One of the most telling signs that something was very wrong with the world came from a historian named Procopius. While serving as a military advisor to the renowned General Belisarius, Procopius noticed strange occurrences in the sky while he was traveling in Sicily. He wrote about the sun's light, describing it as dim and eerie like an eclipse that seemed to last for the entire year. According to him, the sun shone, but without its usual brightness, casting a gloomy shadow over the land for months on end. This wasn't just an isolated observation. Other historians also noted the strange behavior of the sun during this period. One such scribe, Michael the Syrian, recorded that the sun became so dark that it lasted for 18 months. Even when the sun did appear, it only shone for about 4 hours a day, and even then, it was just a weak, shadowy light. The dim sunlight wasn't just unsettling, it had devastating consequences. People began to fear that the sun would never return to its former glory, and as a result, crops didn't ripen properly. Even the wine, once a symbol of abundance and joy, turned sour. This period of constant darkness cast a metaphorical and literal shadow over the world, creating a global catastrophe that would last for years to come. But what caused this prolonged period of darkness? In recent years, researchers have uncovered evidence that points to a massive volcanic eruption. The ash from this eruption filled the skies, spreading across the world and blocking out sunlight. The effect was like living under a thick blanket of ash and soot, creating what might be called a Seattle-like weather pattern, though without the rain. This eruption didn't just darken the skies, it triggered a global chain of disasters that would unfold over the following decades. Crops failed, famine spread, and even the taste of wine turned bitter. That's one big strike against the year 536. We all learned in basic biology class that plants need sunlight to survive, right? Well, without proper sunlight for over a year, the global crop output plummeted. This wasn't just a regional issue. This was a worldwide crisis. The lack of sunlight caused widespread crop failure, leading to a famine that spread across continents. But it wasn't just the lack of sun causing trouble. With the sun shrouded by volcanic ash, the Earth's temperature dropped significantly. Scientists estimate that global temperatures fell between 1.6 and 2.5 degrees Celsius. Now, to anyone unfamiliar with Celsius, that might not sound like much, but to put it into perspective, that's a drop of between 34.88 and 36.5 degrees Fahrenheit. It was like the entire world was thrust into an early winter that lasted not just for a season, but for years. This drastic temperature drop had devastating consequences for the planet. Crops that once thrived under the warmth of the sun were now struggling to grow in the chilly climate. Famine spread across the world, hitting places like Ireland particularly hard, where they experienced something so dire they named it bread failure, a fittingly grim title for their suffering. Everywhere people were hungry, cold, and desperate. As if dark skies and famine weren't enough to deal with, a plague soon followed. The people of 536 didn't just face starvation. They had to contend with a deadly disease that swept through their already weakened populations. And this plague wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It spread like wildfire, affecting everyone from peasants to nobility. Symptoms of this plague began with sores forming on the palms of the hands, eventually rendering the afflicted unable to walk. The disease progressed with swelling, bursting buboes and pus, leading to a grisly end for many. Imagine what that must have been like in a world already struggling with famine and freezing temperatures. In Constantinople, the plague caused the city to stink as piles of dead bodies began to accumulate. The people had no organized burial system and simply dumped the bodies into the sea, only for them to wash up again later. Even Emperor Justinian, the ruler of the Byzantine Empire, was not spared from the plague's reach, although he did manage to survive. Ironically, the plague would later be named after him, the Plague of Justinian, though that was probably little comfort for the millions of people who died as a result. And it wasn't just Europe and the Byzantine Empire suffering from this deadly combination of famine, plague, and climate catastrophe. Over in China, the weather was going wild as well. Chronicles from the period tell of strange phenomena like dust falling from the sky that could be scooped up by the handful. Summer crops were ruined by freak weather patterns, including snow in August. The result? A famine that wiped out between 70% and 80% of the population in some areas. This bizarre climate disruption was just another chapter in the global story of 536, as the entire world seemed to be unraveling. The cause of all this chaos? Volcanic eruptions. Researchers studying ice cores from Greenland and Iceland have discovered evidence of a massive volcanic event around 536. This eruption sent ash high into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun and triggering a mini ice age that would last for decades. But that wasn't the end of it. There were further volcanic eruptions in Iceland in 540 and 547, plunging the world into what scholars now call the Late Antique Little Ice Age. This cute name belies the devastation that it caused. With the sun obscured by ash, crops failed, and people starved. Across the world, civilizations that once thrived now struggled to survive. The Moche civilization in Peru, known for their advanced irrigation systems and agricultural expertise, faced disaster as an unusually strong El Niño weather pattern disrupted their fishing and farming. Floods wiped out their irrigation systems, and the fish they depended on for food disappeared, leaving their people to face starvation. In recent years, scientists have tried to put an end to the debate about the worst year in history. A group of scholars led by Harvard historian Michael McCormick set out to uncover the truth. Although their original goal was to study metal usage and coinage in the 7th century, their research took a surprising turn when they discovered volcanic fragments in ice cores from glaciers in Switzerland. This discovery confirmed that a massive volcanic event had occurred in 536, plunging the northern hemisphere into darkness and setting off a global catastrophe. The Earth left behind plenty of evidence of this climate trauma, from tree rings that show stunted growth during this period, to the ice cores that revealed volcanic ash from eruptions around the world. Even though the 6th century was marked by death and despair, the story of 536 eventually has a hopeful ending. McCormick's team found that by studying lead in the ice cores, they could trace the return of silver production, a sign that economies were beginning to recover. The appearance of silver coins marked a turning point, as people started to rebuild their societies and find ways to survive in the aftermath of the disasters. So what do you think? Could you survive the worst year in human history? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of the other fascinating videos on the History Speaks channel.